Hey guys, hope you've had a great Christmas and New Year. Today I've got the Sony 24mm G Master f1.4. I'm going to tell you what I think of it. This is a lens that I've hired for the last couple of weeks over the Christmas period. I've been trying it out and using it as much as I possibly can with the Tier 4 restrictions and the lockdown we've got over here in the UK. That has been a challenge, but I want to talk you through the pros and cons of this lens and what I think of it, whether it's worth its price tag of almost $1,250 or pounds. And if after using it for a couple of weeks, I would actually consider buying it. So before we get into the video, a couple of things to mention. I hired this from Hire a Camera in the UK. I'm actually going to do a video about hiring equipment in the next couple of weeks because I think it's really important for people to know what options are out there, and particularly in the UK there's some really good options including Hire a Camera. So because of its wide maximum aperture of f1.4, this lens is a real low light beast and you can use it for star and astrophotography. It's wide enough just about for that kind of stuff. You can also use it for indoor photography without flash or any lighting if you really need to in a pinch. And as I'll talk about later in the video, it is actually really sharp and really good image quality wide open at f1.4, so you do get to use the whole range. I'm currently filming this at f1.6, so you get a really nice knocked out shallow depth of field in the background there and a really good subject separation, and that is true in photo mode as well. I really like the kind of optical quality of this lens and the characteristics that it gives you with that nice wide angle but a nice kind of subject isolation, which is quite rare and goes all the way down to f16. The lens features a 67mm filter thread and a really close focusing distance of 0.24 meters, which can give some really interesting effects. It's particularly good for product photography and also environmental portraits where you want to show the surrounding environment but focus on your subject. The lens features a smooth manual focus ring, an AF/MF switch, a focus hold button which can be customized to other functions, and also an aperture ring which can be declicked for video work. The build quality of this lens, as you'd expect from a G Master lens, is excellent, and although made of predominantly plastics, it is very high quality and feels good in the hand. The control rings and switches feel good, and the focus ring is very smooth to operate and has a nice rubberized texture. As you'd expect at this price point, the mount is metal with a rear weather sealing gasket, and overall the lens feels really well built. The lens features 13 elements in 10 groups and 11 rounded aperture blades, weighing in at only 445 grams. This is one of the lightest 24mm prime lenses available on the market today, and its size is comparable to the Sony 85mm 1.8 or the Tamron 17-28mm, both of which I own, and I was surprised quite how small this lens is in the flesh. The 24mm focal length is a really versatile one. I love using this focal length for landscape shots and street photography, and also if you're using it on something like the A7R III or 4 or even the A7R II, you can use the crop sensor mode and it becomes closer to a 35mm lens at 36mm. Manual focusing with this lens is an absolute joy. It uses a focus by wire system, but it's one of the best implementations that I've seen from Sony to date and provides for a linear, smooth action which makes it really responsive and really easy to manually focus this lens. Autofocus with this lens is pretty snappy. It's not the fastest by any means, but it's good enough and is certainly faster than the 85 GM lens. Here you can see me testing it with both single spot and wide tracking. When it comes to video autofocus, the lens performs really well. Here it's mounted to the Sony a7S III, and as always it will depend on your settings for tracking and sensitivity, but set to 3 and 4 respectively, responsiveness is really nice and you can achieve some very natural looking focus balls using the autofocus and touched focus. I haven't noticed any hunting in either stills or video modes. I've also found that both the animal and human eye autofocus works well with this lens, as you'd expect from a G Master. Unfortunately, the lens does exhibit some focus breathing in video and it is fairly noticeable at times, so that is the one letdown in an otherwise almost perfect lens. Although the lens does not feature any optical stabilization, it would make an excellent lens for mounting on a gimbal. Although this lens isn't as sharp as as the 135mm GM, and certainly isn't the sharpest in the lineup, it is incredibly sharp. And in the centre of the image it's tack sharp at 1.4 all the way down to f11. You only really start to see a decrease in sharpness once you get down to f16. When we look out to the corners of the image, there is a slight drop off in sharpness, but it's still pretty good at f1.4, and once you stop this lens down to f2 or f2.8, it's almost perfect once again. I've tested this lens both on my A7R II and A7S III, and it performs brilliantly on both of those cameras. There is some minor chromatic aberration wide open, but this starts to disappear once you get to f2.8. As you can see, this lens does require some corrections in your editing software for both distortion and vignetting, but again, it is pretty limited even wide open and nothing to be concerned about. As you can see, the autofocus areas when shooting wide open are buttery smooth and create some really stunning images. The bokeh balls are nice and round with the 11 bladed aperture, and if you're looking for top quality at this focal length, you can't look past this lens. It really is optically excellent. So if you stop this lens down, you do get a really nice starburst effect because of those 11 aperture blades. You also notice that it's really quite hard to get much lens flare with this lens, even without the lens hood on. If you're pointing it directly at the sun, as I have in these images, it was actually really difficult to try and get any kind of lens flare. Okay, so do I think this lens is worth its $1,300-ish price tag? The answer to that question is yes, I definitely do. It's one of the best lenses I've used from Sony. I've used most of the G Master range and a lot of other Sony and third-party lenses for the E-mount system, and this is definitely up there in the top 3 lenses. And there are cheaper alternatives like the Sony 20mm 1.8, but I think if you really want the quality, this is the lens to go for. Similarly, the Batis from Zeiss, I've owned the 18mm, and they also do the 25mm f2. And that's a great lens. I have used that previously, but it just doesn't compare to this. This is just one of the best lenses I've ever used, to be honest. Really love the images that come out of this, both for stills and video, but particularly stills. And yeah, as you can tell, I am quite smitten with this lens, and annoyingly, it's the start of a new year. I don't have much money at the moment because obviously of the pandemic, I haven't been working as much, and yeah, now I've hired this lens, I really want to buy it. So we'll just have to see. Hopefully once the virus goes away, I'll have some more work and might be able to invest in this lens long term. But I would definitely, if you're a Sony user, try it out, try and hire it, borrow it, get it from somewhere and just give it a go, because it is excellent. That's going to do it for me today, guys. I hope you found this video helpful. If you have, please do drop a like down below, comment with any questions you've got, and if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.